So I want to talk about the top three things, in my opinion, that have helped bring down the inflation rate. And you're going to notice that higher interest rates by central banks is not on my list. So for me, the top three things that have brought down or have helped bring down the inflation rate. Number one, lower energy prices, lower oil prices helped bring down the inflation rate. And we have a chart on WTI crude, or price of oil, as we like to call it. Obviously, we have the Western Canadian oil here in our country, but a lot of people go by WTI crude, which is the US number, or Brent crude, which is the rest of the globe or European number. So we can see here how the price of oil for quite some time was pretty low. And really not until the month of July did things start to tick higher again. And now look what we have. We have inflation, or at least the top line number, or the headline number, moving higher once again in our country and in the US. And that's because higher oil prices. So obviously lower oil prices brought down the inflation rate. And now the worry is higher oil prices will bring the inflation rate back up again. The second point, or I guess second on my list in terms of helping to bring down the inflation rate, was the return of people to the labor force or the workforce. People are now back working once again, whether they're working part-time from home and in the office part-time, or whether they're working full-time 5 days a week in the office. People are back to work. When we came out of the pandemic, many people refused to go back to work. And in my opinion, that helped cause the inflation rate to rise, because there weren't people around to produce supply of goods so that we had more supply. The demand was strong coming out of the pandemic. People had a lot of money saved during the pandemic because they didn't travel. Government subsidies were there, but the supply wasn't there to meet the demand. And bringing people back to the workforce, people agreeing to come back to the workforce, I think has helped bring down the inflation rate significantly. And of course, inflation going up, the rising costs of goods has forced people to come back to work to pay for that rising cost of goods. So I think they both go hand in hand. And we have a chart here on Canadian employment, and you can see how the employment numbers looked fantastic at the start of the year. January, 150,000 jobs created. Unbelievable number. And now you look to the right-hand side of our chart, and you can see we actually started to see a few negative months of job creation. And that obviously is not a good thing. We want to continue to see job growth. I know the Bank of Canada wants to see job growth slow down, again, to fight inflation. But I think for me and for everyone probably watching, we want to see jobs growth. We want to see good quality jobs, higher paying jobs. And the good news is that we've seen that over the last few years, but things are definitely slowing down. And obviously, people coming back to the workforce helped, in my opinion, bring down the inflation rate. I think if people start losing their jobs because the economy is slowing, maybe that will work negative and have inflation start to tick higher if we start to see job loss. The third topic, or the third, I guess, thing on my list that, in my opinion, has helped bring down the inflation rate is this whole notion of supply chain issues easing. Coming out of the pandemic, as you can imagine, there were a lot of bottlenecks trying to bring parts over from different parts of the world to build a car, or to build some sort of electronic or whatever your business was building or creating. The supply chain was low. Supply chain of clothes. I can remember going to some of the stores and seeing the shelves empty or half full only. And that was because supply chains around the world were slowing down. I remember seeing on the news all those freights off the coast of the United States waiting to bring their goods in, but there were just lineups and lineups of these ships waiting to dump their product onto the shore, and they just couldn't do it. Bottlenecks were really cramping up, slowing up the economy. And so now we're seeing an easing of these bottlenecks. Still, I hear from some individuals in certain industries that there still are some issues with supply chain, but for the most part, if you're looking to get some sort of product, the amount of time you need to wait has been cut down significantly. So again, to reiterate, the three things that I believe has brought down the inflation rate, and none of them are higher interest rates, are lower oil prices, labor force participation, are people coming back to the labor force, and supply chain gluts being removed. And yes, of course, higher interest rates has helped bring down the inflation, but I think that's been more on the demand side, not on the supply side. And if we see higher oil prices, if we see the labor force start to shrink, if we see supply chain issues reemerge, then there is a good chance that we could see inflation move higher again in the coming months. But hopefully that will not happen. And hopefully we can start to see oil prices return back down into that $65, $70 range once again.